Hi, 4th and 5th graders. It's time for our Bible lesson today, and we are looking at Jairus' daughter. And if you remember from before, we've been up in here. Wrong map. See a Genesis, which is also the same as. Let's look at our New Testament map. Sorry, we'll go back to New Testament map. Okay, so here we are, Sea of Galilee, and we have Nain. This is where we're going today, to Nain. We've been to Cana, we've been to Capernaum, we've been across the Sea of Galilee, and now we're going to Nain. So we'll have a good time here in Nain. Interesting time in Nain, to say the least, about what happens with Jairus and his daughter and a widow and her son. Oops, we don't need those yet. Aha. So, let's get into our lesson today. All right. So, a widow's son and Jairus, his daughter. Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Okay, so usually there's a town gate, there's a main road leading into a city, and there was a gate that would make it obvious that this was this city, and it kind of would make it a little bit secure. But it would be obvious that's where you're at. And of course, a widow is somebody who lost her husband. And this widow has only one son, and he died. He's a young man. And so this is what they approach, and they see what's going on here. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, "Don't cry." Then he went up and touched the coffin, and those carrying it stood still. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." He's talking to the boy, or the young man in the coffin. The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. So that's the first situation here. And what we want to see is the reaction of the people, because God didn't do that miracle just to show off. He didn't do that miracle just because she was this lady, but he does it for another reason, and this is the reason coming up here. They were all filled with awe and praised God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." And so they see the truth. They understand that he is God, and they praise him, filled with faith. A man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. While Jesus was on his way, someone came from the house of Jairus. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe and she will be healed." So a synagogue is like a Jewish church, and he's a ruler in the Jewish church, and he believes in Jesus and what he can do, his healing powers. And so he wants Jesus to come, and Jesus says she'll be healed, even though she's dead. Would you find that hard to believe? I think most of us would find it hard to believe coming out of anybody else's mouth but Jesus. And at that time, of course, Jesus has not died and rose from the dead yet. So people don't understand this yet. This is forthcoming. All right? But he believes in him. When Jesus entered the ruler's house and saw flute players and noisy crowds, he said, "Go away. The girl is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. Okay, so the flute players and the noisy crowd. There would be people there that would play sad music because the family was sad. There would be people there that would just be wailing and weeping and crying about the death of the girl. And that was kind of like their job. They would show up at different places where people had died, and that's what they would do. So they had this, like, this was part of their culture, their tradition. And Jesus says, go away. And he says she's asleep. So do you think Jesus believed that she was just laying there, that she wasn't dead at all, that she was just snoring and sleeping like we do at night? Not exactly. Because when Jesus says she's asleep here, what he means is that her body and soul are separated, but they're going to be back together one time, and she will be raised from the dead, just like you and I will someday. And when we die, our body and soul will be separated, and it'll seem just like that, and it'll be Judgment Day, and everybody will be raising up from the dead, and we'll be moving into our heavenly home. And so this is what, when he says asleep, it doesn't mean that he doesn't realize that physically her heart stopped beating and she's dead, but it means that she's going to be, she will arise again. All right, continue to the end now. After the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand and said to her, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and walked around. He told them to give her something to eat. News spread of this through all that region. And so people are understanding that he can raise somebody from the dead, and it's causing faith in him, because that is not something that just anybody can do. And she's eating something, showing that she's not a spirit, that she's not some type of figment, that she's actually a physical human being who needs to eat, drink, sleep, all that kind of stuff. And he's giving her something. They give her something to eat. Okay? So that's our account for today, our miracle being the raising from the dead. Why does he do this? Who comes to faith? The crowds come to faith. The family comes to even more faith, probably. Their faith is increased. And then it spreads through the region. So there's probably a lot of people who come to faith because of that account. Okay, and that's in Luke 7 and 8. There are two situations, and they are both kind of, they're put together. So if you want to stop and do your worksheet, go ahead and then come back. If you want to do it right now with me, then let's do it together here. I had filled this out before. Actually, the first time I recorded it, it didn't record, so that's why everything is all filled out already. So we'll just go down little by little, and we'll get all this put together. I'll kind of cover them up so you don't get confused here. All right. What did Jesus meet when he entered Nain one day? He ran into a funeral. All right. That's basically what it was a funeral. Okay. Secondly, why were there so many people at this funeral? Well, they were the mourners. They were people that were following and being part of that. Okay? They were mourners. How did Jesus show his great sorrow for the mother? He said, "Don't cry." He has compassion on her. He's not being like, "Don't cry." He's saying, "Don't cry." And then shows that compassion on her. And in fact, in the version that I read, it says that his heart went out to her, and that means that he felt bad for her. By which miracle did Jesus comfort the mother? By raising her son from the dead. That is the biggest comfort that you would have when someone dies, to have them raised from the dead. I know my mother would have absolutely loved that if my brother was raised from the dead on that day, instead of staying dead. Jesus can do that, though. He can raise from the dead, and he was doing that, of course, to help people come to faith. All right, which words did the people glorify God with? Upon seeing the miracle, they said, a great prophet has come. A great prophet has come. They were professing that he was the prophet to help his people. Okay. Who was Jairus? He was an official in the Jewish church. We also call that Jewish church a synagogue. He would have been in charge of things and well known. Jesus would have known him, obviously, because he was true God, but also true man. He would have known him just from the synagogue and being in that area. All right, next one. How did Jairus show his faith in Jesus? He asked him to heal his daughter. They were on the way to the house, and he knew that he could help him, and so he asked him to help heal his daughter. Okay. Next column here then. What sad message did someone bring to Jairus? That his daughter had died. That his daughter had died. Very sad news to hear. Next one. Which words of Jesus caused the people to laugh at him? Well, we discussed this a little bit, or I talked about it a little bit a few minutes ago. She is only asleep. She is only asleep because her body and soul are separated, but they are soon to be reunited. How did Jesus show the people his power over death? He made the children alive again, or live again. He made them live again. Right? He rose them from the dead, however you want to put that. He has the power over death. Nobody else has the power over death except for God. And he has power over sin, death, and the devil. Okay, this one we have some choices. Where did Jesus raise a young man from the dead? I showed you at the beginning from Nain. Nain. Over what did Jesus here show his power? Over food, sickness, wind, waves, or death. Well, definitely over death, because he rose them from the dead. How many sons did the widow have? My one and only son. One. All right. How was the young man being carried? He was being carried in a coffin. Coffin. Over what did Jairus rule? He was a ruler of the synagogue. The synagogue. Next one. How old was his sick daughter? She was 12. 12. What did Jesus call death in this lesson? You wrote it above just a few minutes ago. He calls it sleep. Sleep. How did the people in Jairus' house show unbelief in Jesus? They laughed at him. They laughed at him. Whoops. Number 9. What was given Jairus' daughter after she brought her to life? Food. Food. Because people who are alive need to eat, just like Jairus' daughter did. All right. So hopefully, as you look at that, we realize the miracle that happens of God, the second part of the Trinity, Jesus, raising the dead, and Jesus being true God in that sense. We see to his true man side too, by his compassion for others, and by his walking and talking and things. And we see that the people that had died rose from the dead, and they were actually physical human beings, not just figments of people's imagination or any type of of spirit. So I hope you guys have learned something. Keep feeding your spiritual life as we go through these, and stay healthy. And we will talk to you tomorrow.